I'm gonna try and tell you a short, quick, long story, but it's gonna try and do it short, which we all know I can't do. Um, so 3 years ago, I know, 3 years ago, I don't remember 100% the full details of it. I think it was because of my dog, and I could be wrong from that, but regardless, um, I was possibly going to be removed from my living situation due to, again, I don't remember 100%, but I think it was my dog because I do remember something like that going down about my dog. But, anyways, essentially, the ultimatum was like, yeah, get rid of the dog or move out. And I love my dog way too much to ever think about getting rid of her. So obviously, I was kind of under that assumption of I was going to have to leave. But I still had about a month or two of time that I had that I could pull off getting out. So I scrambled and did the thing that I feel like most people do in that situation where you think I have a whole lot of stuff and I have nowhere to put it. And if I have to move out, like where does it go? You know, um, I didn't feel like leaving it, just having someone essentially go through all my stuff and throw it away. So I uh, I looked everywhere, or I looked up all the storage units in my area, and um, I found three of them that were generally ones that I was interested in. So I gave them a call one day, and all of them were full. And essentially, I would be put on a waiting list, which is very common around here. It's very hard to find storage units around here without having to physically drive very far away to get to one. So then randomly, I found out. I don't want to say I found out. I just kind of like forgot, I guess. But there was a storage unit kind of close to where I lived, um, maybe like a mile or two down the road. It's just in a different direction that I'm usually going, so I never really think about it. So I saw it pop up, and I thought, hey, screw it, might as well call. I called, and of course, I lucked out in the sense of there was a one unit that was like available in the sense that they had talked to a guy who was moving to Michigan or moving from Michigan, or I don't remember exactly how it was. Essentially, he would have only needed the unit for like a day, or for like a week or two if he needed it to essentially just like hold his items long enough that he could go to Michigan, unload everything, get it all sorted out, and then drive back, pick up that stuff, and then he wouldn't need the locker anymore. But then it worked out that he didn't even need it at all. So they hooked me up with this locker. Now the locker I got was listed as a 5 foot by 10 foot locker. A little small in comparison to, wait, was it 5'10"? Was it 5'8"? I'm going to assume it's 5'10", but it might be 5'8". I'm pretty sure it's 5'10". But anyways, regardless. So I wanted something bigger. I would have much rather have gotten one that was like the full garage door size because I have a vehicle that I would have totally parked in there if I had it. But they didn't have it, and again, those are one of the most sought after sizes. So they got the storage unit place I have now. I've talked to the people a few times, and they told me essentially their waiting list for one of the big lockers is literally like 24 people long. Like people are just waiting for these lockers. So, um, so I had a lot of stuff and not a lot of space essentially. So I was left with 5 foot and 5'10". But something I noticed when I arrived at my locker, because they took me to it and opened the door and was like, "There's your locker," and literally it's just like a 10 foot distance to a wall, and then it just stops, and it's like it's an empty room. It's like, cool, thanks for showing me that. So, um, when it was finally me alone, and I could go back there and look at it myself, I walk inside and this epiphany of this idea clicks in my head because, like, they charge you by the footage of the idea of like, oh, this is a 6 foot or a 5 foot by 6 foot, so you pay X amount for that, and if you get a 12 by 12, you pay that amount for that kind of thing. So, um, I was paying for that 5 foot by 10 foot. But what they don't tell you, and what you don't realize, is the way my building is designed. I've seen a lot of storage units that do that style where you go through the door and the walls only go up so high and then they stop. And then essentially, if you really tried hard enough, you could like climb over into somebody else's unit and stuff. Um, but this one is one that has actual walls that go all the way to the roof, but there's no roof besides the roof that's on the outside. So essentially, because of where my locker is or my storage unit, it's like two away from being dead in the middle of the building. And so because of that, I have 5 foot by 10 foot by 18 feet tall because of the height of my room. The storage unit goes all the way up to the slanted roof. And so knowing I had 18 feet, I was like, that's a lot of storage space up there that, like, you got to think if you just put things in boxes and just put them on the floor, you'd fill up the floor space in no time and you'd be out of room in no time and you'd be like, damn, you got all this, a whole nother storage locker worth of space above you that you just can't get to. So I used every bit of wood I had, every scrap, every spare 2x4 I had laying around. I put everything I had together without having to spend a dime because, again, I was very tight on money. And I built this massive jungle gym, essentially. It's not a jungle gym. It's just a wooden shelving unit, essentially. But it's very, very large. And it goes up and then it goes over top because of the way it's built. It's kind of hard to describe exactly. And I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately. But built this very large thing. Filled it with all kinds of stuff. It's probably like 800 pounds, maybe 1,000 pounds. Probably going to push probably more like the 600 to 800 pound range that's on this thing. And I 100% trust it a million times. I have no problem with it. I had a buddy of mine come to my storage unit, help me get something in or out of it, don't remember. And he told me he didn't trust walking underneath of my amazingly built thing, and that kind of hurt me because I was like, why? It's nothing wrong with it. And so I kind of let it go, and then I brought it up to him one day because I was like, yeah, it kind of hurt me when he said that because I was like, I did a really good job building that thing out of like whatever I had. I think I did pretty great. And then you just like destroyed my feelings about it. And he essentially was saying that when he was there, that he noticed that this thing was leaning. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about because there's no lean going on. Well, then when I just went there maybe a couple months or a couple weeks ago, because we had got a flood that came through. We had a lot of water that came through and it flooded the low-lying areas in my storage unit. Unfortunately, it's probably why things were available there, is inside of a floodplain. So anything essentially within the first 3 feet is a possibility of getting flooded. So I just put things down there that if they got flooded, they'd survive. It's no big deal. But when I got in there, I noticed that it is indeed leaning because, again, since I did use scrap pieces and threw it together, it's now getting to the point where the stress of the weight is being pushed onto angles and they're kind of flexing in different ways that, just over time. And then on top of that, when the flood came through, it soaked the bottom boards, and now the bottom boards warped. And when they warped, they started pulling out. And since they started pulling out, it essentially started like weakening some of the legs. Now, again, the thing's not even close to falling. It's very, very sturdy still. It's just that I can physically see the damage and the difference in what's foreseeably going to happen in the future if I don't do anything about it. So I've decided, I already started on it, but I decided that I was just going to redo the entire thing. But the problem is how do you take a structure that you already have and replace it without moving the stuff, essentially. And the way it worked was I had a large, like, so I had essentially the area that got built was like 2.5 feet wide by like 6 feet long. And then, so I still had storage space that didn't have this wooden thing in it. And essentially, what I've been doing now is I'm building, like going to Home Depot and buying brand new wood and actually structurally building a brand new one that will last as long as I have that unit. On the back side, it's much bigger already from the original one. So as I start finishing the shelves going up, I just start taking everything off of the top and putting it onto this other one. And then by the time I get to like the midway section, because of how much difference it is in space, I should technically be able to get to the mid section and have my entire original shelf be empty. And then I can just dismantle the entire thing, but to also ensure that it stays safe. As I started building the new structure, I decided that the main posts were going to be two 2x4s screwed together instead of just an individual screw 2x4, so that way it's even stronger. And I screwed not only did I screw the two 2x4s together, I then screwed technically those two 2x4s to the individual 2x4 that holds the leg up for the original thing. So as I'm climbing up it and getting stuff off of it and having it shake and move, it's technically secured to the very solid one now. So in case it does decide to buckle, it would be safe. The only reason I'm doing this is because the way that the building is designed, with aluminum sidewalls that go up to the top, very sturdy and strong. Like if you're a human being and you slammed yourself against it, it'd give way a little bit and go boom, but it wouldn't fall in. I mean, it's strong, it's going to hold up. But I'm going to tell you right now, anything over 500 pounds comes crashing into that wall, it's just going to fold and buckle and rip right out of there. So if I have 800 pounds sitting on a shelf and the legs break and the shelf falls this way and 800 pounds goes collapsing into a giant metal wall, I'm replacing way more than I have money to replace. So I figure it's probably just best that we get it settled now. And then, like I said, I could fill this thing all the way up to the top, or fill it up halfway with everything that I have. Then I'll have from there all the way to the top of the ceiling still that I can fill in. Then after I take the original wooden structure down, I'll have the whole front section. So I'll have like 5 feet by it'll be 5 feet wide by like maybe like 4 or 5 feet in to go before I'd even get to that new wooden structure. And if I want to, if I even need to, essentially, I have it set up where after I take out the old one, if I want to spend the money and the time and to do it, I can then rebuild that original structure I had, but using new and wood and stuff, and tie it into the first, I guess, second structure I'm building, but first structure, whatever, and tie them together, and then I'd have 8 times the storage space. I'm also building these on the full assumption that I'm never giving up this storage unit. As of right now, in the foreseeable future, I don't have any reason why I would get rid of it. But, it's also one of those things where if I ever was like, if somebody came up to me and was like, we're kicking you out of the storage unit, you have a week to get out, I have no idea where that stuff's going to go. I've put so much stuff in there and I've organized it. It's like a mini garage for me. I have like subwoofer stuff, and I have like motor stuff, and I have plastic stuff, and then I have all my toys, and I have collectibles, and I have stuff from my room, and stuff that I made in carpentry class when I was in high school, and just I have everything, and it's all sorted and kind of like nicely neated. I kind of like that, because I'm very unorganized at home. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, so essentially then I didn't have to leave my house. So I've just been, over the last 3 years, I've just been slowly like going through all the stuff I have, because I do unfortunately have quite a lot of shit. I'm a collector. So I go through all my stuff now, and I've been throwing a fuck ton away, but essentially anytime that I want to save anything, I sortingly put it into a box or a pile that belongs to that specific related item. And then once I collect enough or I get enough where I'm like, okay, this needs to go somewhere else because this is for future projects or this is for something I don't need right now, it gets shoved in the storage unit. So even though I make it sound like my storage unit is packed to the brim and I'd be like, oh my God, he's got so much stuff, I do have, like a decent amount. But if I had to put a percentage to the amount of actual room, including the height of the storage unit that I've used maybe like 40%. So, I mean, I still have a lot of space. And essentially, my house is to the point now where I have almost nothing in my house besides like the bare minimum basics. Because now it's anytime I ever have a project in my garage that I want to work on or I want to do, 9 times out of 10, I have to now run to the storage unit to get something because I've put something in there. Very common occurrence for me to do. Um, so yeah, so that's my whole thing. I'm going there in the morning when I get off of work today. I'm going there to work on it a little bit more and all that fun stuff. But it's pretty much the excitement of my life is having to rebuild a wooden structure. Oh, and I also will add, just because people will probably be like, he's building a structure inside of a storage unit. I'm not breaking any rules, okay? They allow you to put up like shelving units and stuff like that, like metal and plastic shelving units, and you can get really big metal and plastic shelving units. And all I'm doing is building a wooden shelving unit is all it is. And the only rule that it gets kind of close to that, that I'm not close to breaking. It's just the rule. It's just a rule that is close to anything that could possibly be something someone would say, like, I don't know if you could do that, which is they have a rule stating that you can't add like anything to your actual unit. Like, you can't physically screw anything to the walls, or you can't, like, I couldn't take my wooden structure and like mount it to the wall, because again, they're not really a structural wall. They're just kind of there to separate you from the person next to you. And so they don't want people poking a whole bunch of millions of holes through them and shit, trying to put screws in and stuff like that. So, but again, I said that I'm not breaking that rule, because again, it comes down to the point where nothing I'm building is attached to anything they have. So, my legs for the structure will be up against the wall or next to the wall, but it's not physically like attached to the wall. It's still free moving. And that, like I said, so that's essentially the only thing, though, that they would have it. But I don't think there's anything I've done that somebody would come in and say, oh, you built a structure to more efficiently pack your stuff into a storage locker you're renting from us. Blasphemy. You have to move out. I don't think that's going to happen. So, but it is kind of cool to think that when and if I ever do get like a property where I got like a big garage or something where I could take all this stuff out of the unit and then like maybe get rid of the unit, the all the wood that I have that's in there, I mean, dude, I could probably build like a small shed with the wood that's coming out of there. I mean, I'm still just now in the process of building it, but I took 6 2x4s there. I took a lot of wood, but I took 6 2x4s there the other day and essentially blew through them because I decided to double up the 2x4s for the legs. So those first, what would have been 6, essentially could have been 6 legs, turned into 3 because they got screwed together. So I had to go get more. And I'm just really beefing it up. And since before everything was like scrap or whatever I had, sometimes, you'd put a runner between 2 things that was a 2x4, but then the next one was like a 1 or a 2x2 or something, like something, just whatever. It would work perfectly fine, but it's just one of those things that would probably work better if you put 2 2x4s instead of one that's one size, one that's other. And yeah, so it's going to look all better. So it's been 20 minutes, and I don't want to make this any longer because I'm sure this video length is already at like 3 gigs on my phone. So I'm gonna go. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you for listening to my story, and I will talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.